Hi, this is Antminer Repair. Today we're going to continue on with this board that found zero ASIC, and I've identified 3 chips that need to replace. We're going to replace or begin to replace one of them. I'm going to break it into 3 parts. It's actually a lot of work. So if you're interested in going through the process of how to change an Antminer chip, or at least try to successfully, I don't know that I'm going to be successful. Sometimes I'm not. Stay tuned. If you like these videos and they're of value, please subscribe. Appreciate that. I'm not going to get 10 million subscribers because we don't know there's not 10 million people out here doing this, but subscribe, and that way you know when I get stuff, when I build stuff. Also, if you just want to be notified, that little bell on your screen, you can notify it. Also, in my description, I have a Bitcoin address or a PayPal address if you want to help support this effort of getting the word out on how to fix these things. I'd appreciate any help you can. I'll apply it straight toward either the video equipment or this activity only. So with that, let's get started. I'm probably going to put this video up into several parts because it takes so long. So in the last video, I was looking at these 2 chips to replace because that's the standard thing to do. So chip 30 and 29, and you got off the board, but chip 1 and 2. I was uncomfortable doing that because there wasn't really anything too far out of whack with it. So I went ahead and stripped the board of the heat sinks, did some looking around, and I actually found 3 different problems. This was in a batch of Antminers we bought from China that were, most all of them were no good. I think this card falls in the category, there's too many problems, let's not fix it. And indeed, if I replace these chips, I might still have problems. We'll see. But maybe eventually I can get this puppy running with a lot of sweat and labor. Okay, so what I found on the board was I think the return signal that starts at this side of the board and comes back didn't carry on for this chain right here. I found a clock signal didn't get past this chip and it resumed back here. So there's a problem in this chip continuing the clock signal. And this one, I found that the RO signal and the reset signal didn't get past here for the rest of the board. So it's important when you go to replace chips, you just don't do all 3 at once, because once you do that, you could have screwed up on this chip now and it stopped all the rest of the chips in zero ASIC, and you're thinking it was this chip, but really you did this one right. So it's very important to set a goal and have a measurable goal after you decide to replace a chip. So my goal for this chip is to replace it, to see signal continue on past here, and to get rid of my zero ASIC found. When this chip is operating like it should, I expect to either see an error here or an error here. That's not for sure. Maybe it can work around it, but I'm expecting that we might see a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, or 20 ASICs found on the return trip. This is where this guy will get picked up. So let's focus on this chip and see if we can change it out of zero ASICs to some other error. And that means we know we probably did okay changing this chip. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to do this high level. I feel a little uncomfortable working on the microscope. I'm going to try, but for right now, to take off this chip, I don't need the microscope. I operate an air gun with a reduced nozzle. I operate it at 450 degrees, and I have the airflow turned all the way down. I've still blown away resistors here, capacitors here. So actually, before I do this, I throw some flux and make them really sticky and messy for a while. I actually throw some flux on all the components around there in an effort to try not to blow them off the board. So the first step I'm going to do is take this off, and then hopefully later on, if my soldering iron is going to behave and I can do this in the time allotted, I'm going to clean up the surface of this board and quit there. And then the next video will be how to prepare a chip, and then the third video will be putting it on. So I'm going to turn on my hot air. I'm going to adjust the air down and turn it to 450 degrees. Give it a second to warm up here. Making noises like the bearing's out. Eventually she'll warm up. All right, here we go. Come on, baby. There we go. All right, so it's 450 degrees right now. Oh, one thing to note, before you remove a chip, take the heat sinks off the back, and for sure. And actually, before I did this, I did some more testing. Here's the power supplies, this, and this for this line of chips. I actually went back again and tested all these guys. They are indeed generating power. It's just not getting by this chip. This chip is stopping something, so I think we're going to dispense with it and get rid of it. All right. So basically, I've put flux around these other parts. Hopefully, they'll just stick up. I like to count when I'm doing this. I'm not going to count out loud. Some chips take about 30 seconds to take off. Some take 40. Some take 70 or 80. I try not to like to heat the board up that much, but basically we're cooking it. You can tug on it once in a while. I actually like all the solder to melt on it. I want to try to leave as much solder as I can on the board. It means less rework for me later. So we just sit here and let this guy cook. We're not going to like damage the chip anymore because we're taking it out and tossing it. But let's see, I can smell that flux. So things are getting kind of warm. Yeah, okay, so I take the edges not where the legs are sticking out and I work on the top and bottom. Just kind of wait till it gets loose. And I've lost count because I'm talking to you guys. So I'm not used to everybody seeing how I do this. And mine has to go in a couple different ways. And as you heat this, you might see these guys become molten solder. That's a good sign. Usually when that happens, you can pull the chip off. Let's take a look here. Not quite yet. And in theory, the solder on the top of the chip should get loose too, although I put black marker on it just to mark it. So I mean, I'm holding this thing like less than an inch, probably 3/4 of an inch to an inch away while I heat it up. So 450 degrees Celsius. See, you're getting closer. Yeah, I got it loose. Good. So I just kind of run some heat over here. That's the bottom of the chip. Usually if I was going to reuse a chip, if I have to do this multiple times, I pop it like that real quick and get the solder back. So let's let the hot air gun loosen up. There's the chip. I'll probably throw it away. Now we've got the bare thing. And I'll switch over to the microscope now. We can have a look at that base. So let me do that. I'm going to stop the video just for a sec and see where my microscope is here. I'm going to move some stuff around. Let's bring this up. Oh, there we go. I mean, it might be really nice. I've never done, that's way too close. Can I get way up by that? Yeah, that's better. You see the whole dude there. Line it up for you. Focus it. Okay, let me turn on the other video for you. Right there. And hit start. Okay, so that's where we took off the chip. So let me explain what we have to do. And I'm going to try to start doing it kind of sideways because my camera goes in. But these are just actually the legs off the board coming in. And this solder looks like in pretty darn good shape. So you see it's a little bulged out by the end right here. That's because when the board came in, it got pushed down. Same thing here. You see that represented as a little ball at the end of the legs because someone pushed it down or the chip fell down and pushed the solder out to the side. So this chip was laid in, you know, fairly good. I except for there, I don't know that it's touching there. But what we have to do with this surface is if this solder builds up, it'll actually push the chip higher than these legs and it won't work. So the first thing I want to do, and I may end up having to clean some of this by accident, is to get all the solder off. So I do that with solder wick, which is, I don't think you can see the word, but it's chip quick solder wick. And I use a lot of flux. I'm going to turn on my soldering iron, but before I do, I want to show you the tip. I use a pretty large tip for the base. See how large that is? And it has a flat surface. It's pretty dirty. I'm trying to keep my tips clean. I haven't mastered that yet, but I'm going to take the wick and I'm going to really heat it up. A small point wouldn't get this place hot enough to pick up the solder. So I'm going to turn this guy on anywhere to 450. I probably will do it 450 just to get enough heat. I'm going to throw some flux down. That's a lot of flux. It's going to smoke. I don't know what's going to do the camera lens, but we'll see. And then I'm going to cut off a little piece of this flux. You can't, or this wick. And I kind of just, I'm going to try to stay away from the legs. They look really good. I just kind of, to start with, and this is going to get hot, so It's going to be weird doing this way. Maybe I can turn it this way. Yeah, maybe that'll work better. And maybe I'll use the solder with my left hand, but I hold it with these tweezers one side because it gets hot, because it enables me with the soldering gun to drag it back and forth. So my soldering gun is getting pretty close to being hot. I'm trying to clean off the bottom a little bit. So hopefully we can, let me get it through the microscope here. Try left-handed. So hopefully we can get it to transfer the heat to clean off the base. And I really want to clean off the base as much as possible. There's going to be some solder on the bottom of the chip. So I'm going to grab the end of this wick with my tweezers. You notice I have it here. I'm just going to overlay this dude down, and hopefully we, yes, you see, so I'm just doing a back and forth movement while that gets warm and trying to pick up the solder. And hopefully we're getting a good clean thing. I kind of sometimes move it up. You want to get right up against the legs, because if that's built up, it'll be too high for the legs to touch the, I'm not always perfect at this, it's kind of hard. Sometimes I might have to add more flux. Let's see if we got any. Yeah, we picked up some on there. You can see it. Let me turn it over. Let's see if we can pick some more up on this side of it. Looks like there's some solder over here. So I'm just going to kind of drag it back and forth. I might accidentally hit some of the pins, and we're going to redress them anyways. So yeah, come on off there. Come on. I just go back and forth till I hear it squeak. I mean, it almost squeaks. That looks pretty clean there. Now, I haven't done the top yet, so I'm going to flip this around, and I'll do the top now. So I'm going to take the top, and I'll really try to go back and forth with that. It's kind of hard the way I've got this. So I really try to take all the solder off of it. And that looks pretty good, actually. The way I can tell if there's much solder left, it's kind of hard. You can tell now. It looks like maybe a bunch in the middle. So you can see me moving around a little bit of solder on there. I've got a little bit still on here. Oh, this isn't bad. I think I'll try to wick this a little more. So my good old friend flux, you throw it on there. And let me get my wick down, and maybe we can get a good back and forth. I try to go in the direction of this. Yeah, it's starting to squeak a little bit. So yeah, look at all the solder. Look at what it's picked up. So all right. So I'll fill that later. So what I do now, and clean off your solder tip, definitely. Good. I'm gonna turn this dude off. Let it cool off for me. Good old alcohol and Q-tips. I'm gonna go clean up the surface to see what the heck I have left here. Where are my Q-tips? Right off the bat, so off it goes. So I'm gonna actually put alcohol with Q-tip around here, and I do take a paper towel and just sop that up. So just by eyesight and by feel, looks like I did a pretty good job. You see, that's pretty clean. There's not a lot of solder on it. It is coated in solder, but there's not a lot of solder. Here's the wick we used. It's like really stiff. So there's a ton of solder on that wick that's soaked up. So that's kind of cool how the flux and the wick work, but you do have to exert some pressure on that. So I did that. You can see where let me get I'll just get my tweezers. You can see down here, I actually cleaned the solder off the pins. So I'm going to need to address that. I'm going to need to put it back on. I'm a little weak at that. I do it a couple different ways. You're supposed to be able to throw it on top of your tip and coat it with your tip and just run the tip along and it feeds it. I haven't had luck doing that. So I have, let me see, where is that? I haven't done any soldering for a while, and I rearranged my desk, so I got to find my solder. So where are you, solder? Let me find it. I've got two things of solder that I use. So I keep the plastic solder tip. This is plastic and this is not plastic, and you can't see it in the microscope, but I've got some 186 degree solder, which is what this uses. And so I take this, and if I can find my needle, sorry for moving around on you. So the next step is to put solder on these legs. So I actually squirt just a little bit out and try to make a line here. And I'm not very good at doing this. You don't want to slop over. And no matter what comes out of this, and this is probably dry because it's been sitting, so I'm going to get rid of the first part of it. This is solder paste, 186 degree. So I try to run a line of solder. Yeah, stretch it out along here like that. Okay. I do the same thing over here where I, actually over the whole thing. I'm probably going to get a solder ball here. Geez, that's the best job I've ever done doing a solder ball, solder line. I guarantee you, right here, that might be too much solder. This is probably too little. What I'll do is I'll probably drag some of this down with this pin right now. So under the microscope, I'm going to try to even this out. So that might be enough actually. So I'll just throw a little bit more in here. And same thing on this side. I got a big bunch. You center that right down here. Maybe I'll try to bring that down. So now I'm going to use the magic of air again. I'll try to do this. I'm going to turn on the air gun. I'll try to do this on the microscope. Hopefully I can do that. This is a lot of times where I blow out the resistor and stuff, so I'll try to be careful. But let me see if I can get this in here and in a way so that it melts. So you can see it getting warm. I've got the air gun right here. It's kind of interesting. I don't want to blow it one way or another or into the thing. I'm going to try the far side first. I'm still at 450. Let's see, there it is. I'm still at 450. I'm just heating it up. Maybe back and forth a little bit. You can see it changing. It's starting to dry out. Hopefully the flux in the solder paste will work. If not, I got a mess to clean up, and I'll clean it up. I've had that before. Let me come in from this way. Probably a little bit hard to see, but trust me, you'll see the end result as soon as I get it warm enough. Usually do it like directly above. There's some starting. So turn that paste into solder that's melted. Come on. I know you can do it. Come on. I got a bunch that's on the end that's being stubborn, so it's thinking about it. Here she goes. She's warming up. You kind of see that change. It's kind of cool. I've never seen it in the microscope. It's even cooler in the microscope. So if I end up with a blob here, I can just clean it off. It's okay. Either wicking it or spreading it across. See, those are really just micro solder balls. I'm just not getting it hot enough, probably at this angle. But let me try back here. But I can turn that into solder when I'm dragging the actual solder iron. Okay, so we got this one over here to do too. So let's take care of this side. You see how that changed over? Let's get this top part changed over. Okay, so I kind of knew there was going to be some solder balls and some bridges. That's okay. We're going to clean that all up. But I've got solder on there. I've got more than enough, and so I think I can deal with it. All right, so I've done that. I'm going to turn off the air. And bear with me. I've got to take a hot tip off my soldering iron and change to a smaller tip. It's still hot from when we I'm going from a big tip to a very small pointed tip. Okay, so I'm going to pull that off. Let's see, there it is right there. And we're going to clean all that up with the magic of flux. And usually on the small stuff, I actually, instead of doing it at 450 for the soldering iron, I'll probably bump it down to 350. Okay, I've got to change the orientation because of my hand works better up and down. So we're going to work on this side of the pins first and clean up this mess and make them nice, kind of like those. Those kind of fell into place by themselves because I had the right amount of solder, but just so I can focus a little bit. I think that's pretty good. So I dropped my flux. Let me pick that up. I saw something fly down here when I was working. Oh no, flux is here. So we're going to work on this side. Well, let's work on this side first. The reason being is I have to reach through. So I'm going to flux these pins up, and I'm going to actually use a soldering tip to help distribute it and to pick up the excess solder. Okay, so let's try to do this. I'm going to do it with sight, but you guys will see it on the microscope. I'm going to watch it later. So here we go. Hopefully my tip is going to behave. Maybe I need a different tip here. It needs to be clean. So. Yeah, this tip's not working too good. Let me see if I can clean them up a little bit. Let's see how this goes. I think this was an old tip I grabbed incorrectly, but let's see. Yep, time to change tips, guys. Hang on. Off I go. You do this with a tweezer so I can handle hot stuff, but it's not very pleasant when you get burned. Get my newer tip. This is not the right tip. This tip was burned out, I think. Where are you, good tip? That must be you. There, I got it. Let him warm up again. I'll reposition this to where you can see what I'm working on again. Right here, I'm going to clean up that mess over on this side. So, okay, we're at 320 now, nearing 350. Hopefully that's enough. Let's give it a shot here. Yeah. Okay, so if you just flux this whole thing and run the soldering iron down and then clean it up in between, I'll slowly get rid of the excess and leave a nice set of solder legs. So keep moving these guys down, cleaning off the tip. And they have to reflux again. Okay, so I still got a bump there and a bump up here. So I'm gonna try to do him. Okay, clean the excess solder off. I'm cleaning the tip off, and then let's take care of this guy down here so he's good. Bridged. That looks pretty good. I want to have as much solder on these as possible so they're high. So that is pretty good. This guy looks a little uneven in here. I think you can actually touch it, make it. I don't know how it is on the screen. Yeah, so I guess he's there. So that's preparing the legs. I didn't get too much slop over into here. I think I saw some come onto here. I may clean it up. All right, so now let me clean my tip off again. Let's do the other side. I'm gonna throw a lot of solder, a lot of flux, I mean. And then I'm gonna work on getting the excess off and making these pins nice. So here goes. So far, so good. Clean off the excess solder. We got the bridge and that mess down there, so I'm going to try to pick some of that off. Good. Now I'm just going to even throw a little more on flux and just run it along there, and they should have nice uniform solder on these dudes. So, yeah, I don't know why that looks so big and these look so small. Maybe it's just the light. I don't know. These look a little flat, like they don't have enough. Do you see that? I can't tell, you know, sometimes the flux, when you're looking through the flux, looks weird. So what I'm going to do now, I may need to do this again. I'm going to clean it off with alcohol and have a close look at it. Let's clean this guy up. They don't all look uniform to me, which is kind of interesting. It's not how it usually comes out, but Let's have a closer look. See if I can dive in here. Yeah, definitely I need to do some work down here. That's more flat than sticking up like these. You see these guys? That looks okay. It's just not uniform across. Still worried about that middle guy. He just doesn't look quite right. So let's take a really close look here. I want to see really what's going on here. Hang on. Okay. Use the benefits of the microscope. So what is wrong with that guy? Is it just that it needs cleaned? I'm gonna run some more alcohol in here. Yeah, I don't know what's on there. It's like it's a coat of burned plastic or something. It's burned. So I'm going to, I lost the audio on my feed, so I'm actually voicing this over. So I was looking at that guy and he had a bump. And I was thinking, well, you know, there's going to be flux when I put on the chip. And so he's likely to go more toward the chip. I was concerned about the flat spot here on this one, on there. And I didn't like those guys down there because they didn't quite have enough solder. They need to kind of look bumpy and rise up. So looks like I needed to work on those more. And so I'm going to do that. Sorry, this is voiceover after the fact. My original voiceover on the last 10 minutes of this was much better, I have to say. So right now I'm basically heating up the soldering gun and I bumped the board. So I'm heating up the soldering iron to do some more work. And I've got some solder in a yes, I'm adding flux first. I've actually got solder in a roll that's 186 degrees Fahrenheit, which matches the type of solder. What's kind of interesting when I put it on here with the tip, and I've not really great at doing this, but it looks like it worked this time. It looks like it almost wanted to separate from the original solder, like they're two different types of solder. So I have seen videos where you're supposed to clean all solder off and start with fresh new solder. This might be the case for that. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to spread it out and drag it down, and I think I give that up and drag it back up, and I succeed. So let's watch this. I don't have enough flux here, so I need to throw some more flux on to drag the solder. When you have a lot of flux, it'll stick to the soldering iron, so then you purposely continually clean off the soldering iron and it picks it up. So yeah, so I picked it up. I'm cleaning off the soldering iron. I'm dragging it down now. I'm really specifically concerned about the areas where I didn't have enough solder down there on the legs. So I'm taking that bridge right there and I'm going to take that excess solder and I'm going to bring it down. So I just keep working it down. There you go. And probably need more flux now to get it off to the iron. Looks like I flattened that leg out again, but I think it's okay. So I just keep, sometimes I throw it off onto the board. You just keep dragging it down with flux and you can get it off. Sometimes it just sticks to the iron and takes off the excess. Yeah, more flux is always a good thing. So yeah, just keep, there it is. I got some on the iron, so I cleaned it off. Go back for some more. There, got it. So that's pretty close. You see some slop in there, but again, you're going to have flux while you heat up the chip, and it's going to really stick to the chip's legs, not something else. A little concerned. Maybe I'm pointing this out in the video. I've got some excess solder that went onto the pad. You don't want that because I tried to clean off the pad, but when I go to clean off the pad again, I'll pull the solder off the chip. So it's a careful dance. All right, so I'm gonna look at that one leg that was kind of funny. I think it's just short of solder or something. So I'm just gonna touch it with a soldering iron and clean it up. And I think in general, it's okay. So I'm gonna take that as is. And I think I had one that was kind of odd down there and I'm gonna try to fix him. So flux and then tap him there. Good. Yes, I think in general that looks okay. So the next step, in general, all those look good. The next step is to get some alcohol and clean it all off and really see what you have there. I see I have a bridge there. I think I find that later and clean it off.
Oh, I'm putting the solder on there. I put the iron on there with some flux just to see how deep that solder is. And it's not that deep. It's got a little bit. So I don't think there's enough solder to raise it above the legs that I've built, so I'm okay. Those edges concern me more. If you can see the edge right toward the legs, there's a lot of solder built up, but it's still not as high as the legs, but I don't like that. So I'm turning it around so I can work with my right hand. I'm going to try to take the soldering iron. I think this is where I do it and smooth that out a little bit. Let's see. So I'm just going to try to get down those edges, especially along the outer edge. I don't want to touch the legs. Um, I probably do this again. So I'm probably wiping off my soldering iron right now. I do that a lot. You keep your soldering tip the way you want it. It looks like I got some flat areas there still, maybe, but so I'm cleaning it up with alcohol again right now. And inspecting things. There's a small piece of solder bridging in between. I'm just going to take the needle and break that apart because when I'm soldering, the flux should drive that solder to itself, not across to another solder joint. So I'm testing on the tip of the needle if it's kind of a hump. That's a little bit low, to be honest. It's not sticking out like the others. I don't know if I go back. I might go back and fix that. I'm probably due. I think I put some more solder there on those guys. So this is just kind of a repetitive process, and you have to be patient and get it till it's perfect. So I'm going to go apply some more solder and cause a bridge and have too much solder, and then I'm going to wipe it down and off again. So I'm looking for my solder right now, so I bump the board. Hopefully I bring it back so you guys can see it. I hope anyway. Yeah, there you go. So here goes. We're going to put a little more solder in there. That left thing is the solder wire I bought, and the right is the tip. I've got it in flux. And yeah, you just kind of distribute it out there, wiping off the solder. Got to stop hitting the board, right, guys? It's kind of hard to watch now. So there's a big bridge. That's certainly not going to work. So we got to pick up that excess solder and you got to flux it so that it does what it's supposed to do. And I got one small bridge in there. Do you see that? Let's see if I go back and do that. Yep, I'm going to go back and take care of that. Kind of flattened him out, but he's got solder on there. Really, I should apply more solder. You notice there's no flux where I'm working. Really need more flux there. Looks like I realized that. So here I come with the more flux. Oh, and do it again. Some more solder. So I add some more solder to make sure those guys stick up enough. More flux so I can spread it out. And that looks pretty good. That's actually getting pretty close to the way it's supposed to look, I think. For those of you who are professional solderers, if you could give me instruction, this is all I've gotten off of YouTube and all the studying and reading I could do. I've gotten to where I can kind of get around. I've been successful with this, but I've also been not successful with this. So maybe I'm going back here to look at these guys because that guy looks flat, not positive. Definitely need, yeah. So I'm pointing that out. I might think that's okay. It's debatable. If that part on the right is where the chip's sitting, it won't set, but most of it's a bump up high up there. So I think it's okay. Yeah, those guys are kind of sloppy, but they're not touching each other. So I think I'm dragging the pin across, and you can go tick, 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 tick across the pin, and it shows them kind of set up, okay? And I'm looking at the board again to make sure. I'm using my finger to see if it's smooth. Then I kind of notice those ridges. I'm not real happy with those. The pin is stopping. Those are like solder balls sitting up there. So I'm basically gonna take the soldering gun with a little bit of flux, try to spread it out and smooth it out. So yes, yeah, knock down those little bumps so that the chip, when I go to put it on there, is going to set fairly flat, and definitely that the legs are higher than the base of the solder. So I'm just kind of smoothing it out. Probably what I'm going to find is I probably should have picked it all up again with the copper and done a better job to begin with. So. All right. So I think I'm going to clean all this up with alcohol again and then talk about what we do next. We're going to have to do something similar with the chip that I'm going to use. You have to prepare the chip in a like way. The chip has to have some solder on the main pads and it has to have solder on the legs. So I'm cleaning it right now. So there goes the cleaning. And I'm wiping it off with a paper towel. Most of the time that works okay. And I see that dog hair in the microscope, so get rid of the dog hair off there. We don't want that. That could cause problems, smell bad, break electric contact, whatever. So I'm gonna clean that up. But basically, in the next video, we're gonna work on the chip. And then when we've got both surfaces prepared, we'll actually put it on the board and solder it to the board. So in general, that's the video. Hope it helped you, and stay tuned for part 2 of this.